What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality podcast. I'm your host. I'm Caitlin Kenneth Smith, and there's a few things that we need to address on this episode of the podcast. Number one thing being, where have I been? Now, this I'm also filming for my YouTube, and I haven't uploaded a YouTube video in a few weeks. And when I went into 2025 and I set my 2025 goals or standards for myself, one thing that I set for myself was to post a video every single week on my YouTube channel unless I'm dead. And well, although I did not die, 2025 has kicked my ass. But the reality is, the ass kicking has been happening much longer than I'd like to admit to myself. Since really May of 2024, my ass has been consistently handed to me. And going into 2025, I had this mindset that everything was just going to change because it was a new year, which is funny because, how often do I come on this podcast or do I go on my social media or I go on my YouTube and I talk to you guys about how you cannot expect to change unless you do something differently. Just because it's a new year doesn't mean everything's going to change and you're going to all of a sudden be able to stay consistent with your diet or to stay consistent with your workout program. You have to find something that works. And here I am, being a big old imposter, right? That's how I feel. That's how I've felt. But the reality is I'm just human. I'm not a robot. I'm not invincible. I don't pretend to be. But I feel like a lot of people see somebody on social media who looks like they may have their shit together and they assume that they do have their shit together. When in all reality, nobody has their shit together. A lot of people are just really good at not showing the messy stuff. But I think that the messy stuff is the beautiful stuff. The messy stuff, that's what makes us who we are. That stuff, as horrible as it feels going through it, that's the stuff that builds us into the strong, resilient people that are going to accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves. If we never go through challenge, if we never have setbacks, if we never have things that are horrible happen, then we can never appreciate how good we have it. I like to think of it as, when you get really, really sick and you're like unable to even move off the couch, then when you're starting to feel better, you really just appreciate being able to get yourself water, just like the little things in life. So this episode, this podcast episode and this YouTube episode, it's going to be all about kind of what's been going on, but also allowing this and allowing my story and what I'm doing and what I'm going to be doing in the future to be something that inspires you to take action if you feel like you can relate to this. Because I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, oh my goodness, that's me. Or they're going to have this realization, because a lot of us like to just pretend everything's okay when in all reality our whole life is on fire. I do that. I've done that. I'm doing it now. But that's, again, just part of life. Life is going to be on fire sometimes, but you can't appreciate the cold times unless life's on fire. But let's get into kind of what's been going on over the last, couple of weeks, right? Because, like I said, 2025 has kicked my ass. And it's crazy because it was literally like we got into 2025 and it was like boom, 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 boom. All this shit hitting me all at once. Actually, it didn't happen all at once. It'd be like one thing happened and then I would get over that and then something else would happen. So all of this happened and all of this is going somewhere. So I have to tell this story for a reason, because all of these things that have happened to me in the beginning of this year so far has allowed me to fucking wake up and have that epiphany to be like, I have to change something. My body is literally screaming at me. I'm running on empty and I need to do something about it, or I'm just going to continue down this path and it is not a fun path to be down. So it all started in a couple weeks ago, right after I uploaded my last YouTube video. So I don't know the exact timeline because I am so bad with weeks just blending together. The only time I ever know what day it is dependent on what training day it is. So today is Monday, it's leg day. But it all started with me finding myself in the ER. Now, in order for you to understand why I landed myself in the ER, we will go back in time to a few days before I was in the ER. So I was in the ER on a Saturday, and then on a Tuesday is when things really started to lead to the ER visit. So on Tuesday, I had a session that involved a lot of skiing. It was a 5,000 meter ski, and every 500 meters, I would get off the ski erg and do 10 double push-up burpees. And for those of you who have never used a ski erg before, you are using much more than your upper body. You are using your core a lot. Like, you are shredding your core doing a ski erg if you're doing it right. If you're doing it wrong, you're using your lower back, and you'll definitely know if you're doing it wrong. So do it right. But later in that workout, I also had a ton of core work, including 50 strict toast bar programmed for me by my PT to help strengthen my core. And hell yes, we are strengthening it. Maybe a little bit too much, because here's what ended up happening. Wednesday, I had even more core work. And then Thursday, I was stretching later on in the day because that's my active recovery day. And I all of a sudden started getting these cramps in my core, like really bad cramps, like some of the worst gas pain you could imagine, but it didn't feel like gas pain. It almost felt like somebody took a knife and was just twisting it in my stomach and in my core. So initially, Tuesday night, I had some cramping in my core. But again, because I knew I did so much skiing, I really didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, maybe I'm a little bit dehydrated from the workout because it was a little bit hotter the days leading up to it. So I was losing a lot more electrolytes. So on Thursday, when I started feeling those intense cramps, I was really worried that something internally was going on. So my number one concern was, is it my gallbladder? Is it my appendix? Am I going to die? Not actually, but the pain got so bad Thursday night. I have a very high tolerance for pain, and I don't say that to try to act all high and mighty, but I do. If I'm complaining about pain, that means that I'm in a lot of fucking pain. Because a lot of the times, I'm in pain, but I'm training. I'm in pain, but I'm working. And I kind of ignore it, which is terrible advice. But, sometimes you gotta. And I remember sitting on the couch Thursday night. Stone was already in bed. I was up. And I almost woke him up to take me to the hospital because of how much pain I was in. And again, if you know me or if you followed me for a while, you know that I don't like doctors, and I will not go to a doctor unless I'm actually dying, which I thought I could be. But in my head, I said, okay, this is going to pass. You're going to be okay. Did I really believe that? Kind of. Enough to where I just literally had a heating pad on me, and I had a muscle stim on my back because it felt relaxing, and I fell asleep on the couch like that. But I thought in my head that, okay, I would just go to sleep and then I'd wake up and it'd be okay. But it wasn't. I woke up in the morning at 8 a.m. Stone woke me up and was like, hey, what's going on? You never came to bed last night. And I told him about it. And I was like, but it's not better now. I thought it would be better. It wasn't as intense. It wasn't a 10 out of 10, but I still just felt this constant dull ache. And occasionally it would start getting it that sharp, twisty knife feeling. That's the best way that I could describe it. And it was in my upper left stomach area, but it was also down into my belly button area. It was just everywhere because people have asked me, when you go to the hospital, they're like, where exactly is the pain? I'm like, well, it's here, but it's also here. And then it goes over here sometimes. So in my head, I was like, well, it's traveling around. So based on my knowledge of GI issues that I've had in my lifetime, I'm like, oh, that's just really bad gas. But why do I have such bad, the worst gas I've ever had in my life? And Friday, I was going down the rabbit hole. I advise everybody and anybody who ever has anything going on with their body to never Google your symptoms. Because number one, you will see that, hey, if you have a headache, if you Google that, well, you're either dehydrated or you're dying of cancer. And it goes for every single symptom that you Google. Like if I Googled extreme pain in stomach, it's like, go to the ER, your appendix is exploding, you have this, and that, or, you just have some gas, or it's your menstrual cycle. You just don't know. So I think it's so important to not put yourself in that situation because that just adds more unnecessary stress, and stress makes pain worse. So don't do that. Go to a doctor if you think something's very wrong, or use your common sense. I texted my husband that the pain was still really bad and I would have bouts of it getting really, really bad. And he asked his medic, based on what my symptoms, what he thought. And he said, it could be like her gallbladder, it could be her appendix, it could be all these things, which is, again, what I was most worried about. I was worried about gallbladder or appendix, which I've never had issues with, but most people don't have issues with their appendix until it's about to explode. Then you take it out. And then gallbladder wise, I don't know enough about it. I have a client who's had issues with it, but all I know is that literally anything could have been happening and I wasn't sure, and I was just causing myself more stress, which is just what I do. And this is kind of the theme of the episode, so we'll get into more of that. But Stone came home later that night on Friday, and I was just sitting on the floor in my office with my heater like right on my stomach, which, again, I don't advise these things. But when you're in a lot of pain, you just go into like desperation mode. And I just had the muscle stim thing just constantly on my back because it just felt nice to distract myself. And he was like, what does it feel like? Does it hurt when you stretch like this, like that, like this? First of all, Stone should be a doctor because every single time in our relationship where I've had something going on with me, or he's had something going on, he's like, it's this. And every single fucking time, he's right. And I hate to admit as a wife that my husband is always right, but he is always right. And it's really annoying, but I love him to death. And he said, there was one time a couple of years, I think it was like a year ago at this point, where he did a workout that my coach wrote for him that was overhead pressing and a lot of GHD sit-ups. And he said, I remember having this exact feeling like somebody was ripping apart your insides after doing that GHD workout. And it was just my core muscles were like super broken down and just super sore. And I was like, it kind of does have that like, I just did like a billion sit-ups feeling, but it also has that like sharp stabby ripping my insides apart feeling, which isn't natural when you do core work, right? You anticipate maybe being a little bit sore, maybe feeling like you can't really laugh, but not that somebody's like shredding your insides. So what I said to him is, I was like, if this isn't gone by tomorrow or if tonight is really bad again, I want to go to the ER tomorrow after first watch so we can see what's going on. He was like, fair. So Friday was, again, 10 out of 10 pain, just like Thursday. For some reason, it kept getting bad at night, and I figured out why, but I'll explain that later. This is going to be a long episode, so buckle in. And we went to the ER Saturday, and again, the pain never went away. It was always just there. But then sometimes it would almost like spasm or get really bad. But one of the weirdest things about it, again, is like I was worried about my gallbladder, my appendix, or just something going on with my stomach, but I was still hungry. Like I was starving like I normally am, and I was able to eat, like had no issues there. So I was like, it doesn't feel like a gastro issue, even though like it's in my stomach and you would assume that it was a gastro issue. So we went to the ER and I had one of the most terrible experiences that I've ever had in an ER. It was wonderful except for one person, which this is also a lesson to remind yourself that if somebody is having a bad day and you're just in their path of destruction, it's not you. Kill them with kindness. They'll come around, I promise. But the doctor that I saw, unfortunately, was having a bad day, I hope. And again, I just killed her with kindness. But I'll explain the story because I feel like a lot of people who listen to my podcast will probably get on my back here. I checked in, everybody was super nice. The doctor comes in, immediately shuts down my pain and says, it's probably acid reflux. Have you ever had acid reflux before? I could barely get a word in. And she was just, chalking it up as bad acid reflux. I'm sorry, bitch, but I'm not here for acid reflux. I would take a Tum if I had acid reflux. But she was just so focused on it being that. And she was like, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to put some pain medication and some Prilosec, which is an antacid, into your IV. We'll hook it up to you and we'll do some scans. And I said, well, I'm allergic to Prilosec, so please don't inject me with Prilosec because it'll get worse. I learned that in high school that I'm allergic to Prilosec. That's random. And I said, I want to refuse the pain medicine because I do not need it. I don't need pain medicine. I don't take pain medicine unless I'm like unable to move. And after that happened, she just didn't want to hear much of anything from me. So they took my blood work. My blood work came back fine with the exception of my blood sugar being super low. And by super low, I mean 65, which if you know anything about blood sugar, 65 is stupid low for being fasted. I was not fasted, I was fed. However, they didn't do their due diligence. They didn't ask me questions like, did you work out really intensely this morning? Which I did, which could lead to my blood sugar being a little bit low, but I felt fine, so there was no issue there. She said, okay, because your blood sugar's so low, we're going to hook you up to an IV with fluids and a dextrose solution. And I said, can I please not have that? I feel fine. And then she was really pissed off. And she said, well, why are you here? What can I do for you? And I said, I just want to make sure that my insides are okay. Can you please get me some scans? So we had a CT scan done, which I've never had done before. If you've never had a CT scan done before, they're weird, especially when they do it on your organs. You have to like get injected, which I did. I got injected with the stuff, despite my doctor probably thinking that I wouldn't. That like warms everything up and it allows the machine to actually read your organs and see if they're good. It was weird. What they did find is I have an ovarian cyst on my left ovary, which I did not know that I had. But they said that probably wasn't causing any of the issues, and they really never figured out what the issues were until I sent my blood work to my friend who is also a doctor, who told me what is going on, which I am so upset that I spent the afternoon, my Saturday, in the ER. I learned I had an ovarian cyst, which they said, oh, they'll just dissolve on its own. Not a big deal. It's not infected. There's no complications with it. Just, it'll go away. But they never gave me an issue for the actual pain that I was in. But if they looked at my blood work, they would know what was wrong with me, which pissed me off because they told me my blood work was fine with the exception that my blood sugar was low. However, if you look at my blood work, which again I sent to my friend who is a doctor and a hormone specialist, all of my kidney stuff was elevated, signaling that I have extreme muscle breakdown and a very mild case of rhabdo in my core. But they didn't see that, or they didn't think it was necessary to bring up because they didn't even ask if I was an athlete or if I worked out at all. Maybe I just look like I do. I hope I do. But they didn't ask me. If they asked me what I did and I said, I am a CrossFit athlete, I work out like 3 hours a day, they probably would have been like, oh, she has like rhabdo. But no, they did not ask these questions. So here I am just going outside of my doctor to a doctor I actually trust to tell me what's wrong with me. So anyway, I had rhabdo in my core. That was the most painful experience probably I've ever had. So if you have ever had rhabdo, it's an extreme muscle breakdown. And it usually it happens in one area. So I've had it in my quads before about 5 years ago. That was miserable, but in your core is miserable. So the pain didn't get better at all. That was Saturday. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it was a little bit better. But Thursday I woke up and for the first time my core wasn't swollen. So it got to the point where my core got super swollen and it was just constantly in pain and just felt so inflamed. And what I learned is that every night it got so bad because I was putting a heating pad on it every night thinking that would help it, but it was actually making it more inflamed. So instead, Wednesday night, I put an ice pack on it. And then Thursday morning, I woke up and I felt so much better. So learning experience. And all of this to say that I took a deload week that week, like an extreme deload week. And during that extreme deload week, I did something that I hate to admit. And I'm admitting it here because you guys are going to hold me accountable, but also because I tell the whole story and the vulnerability. I had a regression with my eating disorder. Not in any of the fact where I was extremely restricting, but I was restricting. And honestly, probably extremely. I did eat. I hit my protein goal every day. I was just eating probably 1,000 calories less than I should. And I was hungry. So I was restricting myself. And I reached out to a friend who can relate to this, who's had issues in the past with eating disorders, who is an athlete herself. And we had a good conversation. And it made me realize that I need to stop this restriction. Because in my head, I'm like, oh, well, once I get back to training, I'll be fine. I'll start eating more again. But it started getting to the point where in my head, I was like, well, one more day won't be bad. Like, restricting a little bit won't hurt. And I was getting comfortable with restriction. Despite, again, I was hungry. So it's not like I wasn't hungry and I was listening to my body. I wasn't listening to my body. I was ignoring my body, which I'm really good at. Because that's what I did. My whole fucking eating disorder, my whole fucking life, I ignored my body. I ignored hunger signals. And that week where I was eating less than I probably should have, when my body needed to be in recovery mode, I was restricting. So when I got back to working out on Monday, I felt so fatigued. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. And I did some of the highest volume squats that I've done in probably a year with everything that's been going on with my back. And my legs were so sore to the point where I thought I got rhabdo in my legs, because I have never had my legs feel like that during a workout, after a workout, for days, for a week after that workout. To the point where on Friday, when I was doing lunges, my hamstring or my adductor, I still can't figure out what it was. I think it was like a combo of the two, was like, no, nope, not doing it. And they strained or pulled them. I don't know. I did something to them where I couldn't train lower body for about 5 days. And then I got the flu. So here we are. Okay. So here we are. And I tell all of this because, like I said, 2025 has kicked my ass. And I've never had injuries like this. I've never been this run down. I've never had this happen to me where I can't recover from fucking workouts. A year ago, I used to train crazy amounts of volume, rarely feel sore, feel fucking awesome all the time. And I never knew, like, what changed. It kind of just slowly changed. But if I can really think about it and pinpoint it, which I thought about last night as I was thinking about, okay, how am I going to talk to the camera today? What am I going to tell you guys? I realized that I haven't been happy in a long time. Like, in a long time. And there are some things that I won't share that I've been through in 2025, more mentally, that I never want to share. But who knows, I might in a couple of years. Just moments of weakness, because I realized I haven't been happy in a long time. I realized that I haven't been living my life. I haven't been present. I've been talking to you guys and acting like a fucking imposter because I'm telling you, hey, be grateful, be present, focus on what you can control, which I am, but I'm also focused way too heavily on putting all of this external pressure on myself. Or I guess internal pressure, because I'm putting it on myself. Nobody's putting it on me. And I thought that I was just invincible to the point where I was like, I can push through this. Like, I can do it. But in all reality, I was just losing myself. And it's a conversation that Stone and I have had as well, where it's like, I just want you to be happy. I mean, the stress of building my business, the stress of trying to become this athlete that I want to become more than anything, and the stress of trying to build a life for my husband that I feel he deserves. It's a lot, and it's something that I'm putting on myself because I want big things in life, and that's never going to change. Like, I'm not changing what I want out of my life. But last night I had a moment where it hit me, where I thought, what changed? When did all of this really start? And it goes back to May of 2024. I developed plantar fasciitis, like bad plantar fasciitis, to the point where it was hard to walk. And I've never had anything like that. Like, that was the first thing where it was like, whoa, I have this injury thing. And then a month later, my back, my pelvis, my hips, I had the worst issues with them, with everything going out of alignment, with my back just having nerve problems, and then herniating a disc, and all that I could think about is, where did this start? In May of 2024 was where it really began. In April and March is when I went all in on building my coaching business and left the company that I previously worked for, Hidden Summit. A lot of you know me from Hidden Summit. And I went all in on building the Powerhouse Mentality into a coaching business, into an apparel business, and really going all in on the content and everything like that. In addition to being a wife, which is also like, Stone was leaving a lot more around that time. That's when he started really traveling a lot more for work. And I realized that this is all happening because of stress. I mean, I tell my clients all the time, we can't handle it all. We have to manage the stress, because we all have this bucket of stress. And, life gives us stress. Stress is inevitable. Stress is necessary in life. However, too much of it, that bucket overflows and you can't handle it anymore. And there's so much science behind how stress isn't just mental. It's literally like a full body assault. It affects every single system in our body. And when you're constantly in a high stress state, which most of us live in, your body thinks it's in survival mode. It's prioritizing short-term survival over your long-term health. So let's break it down a little bit, because we're all about science here, and I love science, and I know you guys probably love it too because you're here. So your nervous system, we have this stress response loop where you have your autonomic nervous system, and it has two main branches. You have your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, right? And then you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. And chronic stress is going to keep you in that fight or flight, and it's going to flood your body with cortisol and adrenaline constantly. And we can only take so much of that. And over time, this is going to lead to poor recovery, because your body is literally just too busy surviving to actually properly recover and repair itself. You're going to have more inflammation, which gives you a higher injury risk. Your sleep is going to be disrupted, which is going to disrupt your recovery and your immune system function. And, you push through stress. I pushed through the stress, but my body eventually started screaming at me: rhabdo, injury, sickness. And one of these things could be random. One of these things could happen, but all of these things happening one after the other, it feels like my nervous system, like my body is just screaming mercy. We're screaming for help, and something has to give, right? And then with cortisol, right? We spoke about cortisol. We always speak about cortisol, about the stress hormone. And I feel like everybody talks about cortisol nowadays, and it's over spoken about, but it really does lead to catabolism, which is breaking down tissue. So chronic high cortisol inhibits muscle repair, muscle growth, and it makes you more prone to strains and injuries. It disrupts your collagen production, which could weaken your tendons and ligaments. It suppresses your immune system, which can increase your risk of getting sick. And it alters pain perception. So it can make injuries or pain that you have feel worse and recovery slower. So like I said, I've always been good at recovering and training hard until stress took over too much. The hormones too, the stress hormone connection. There's chronic stress messes with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So high cortisol is going to usually equate to lower testosterone, which is important for thriving, vitality, muscle recovery, strength. It can lead to hormone imbalances, which could increase your risk of having ovarian cysts, which is generally why women develop ovarian cysts, is because of hormone imbalances. And that could absolutely be what was going on with me, why I have that. But elevated cortisol, like I said before too, that hormone imbalance causes increased inflammation in the joints and the muscles and the connective tissue. And it can make energy crashes worse throughout the day because of blood sugar regulation. And all of these things just connect to each other, right? The chronic stress is going to equate to tense, overworked muscles, poor recovery, more risk for injury, all this pelvic, back, core misalignment. And they usually just stem from stress, tightness, you know? Now, there's an illusion of being able to handle it all while you're actually burning out, because the body is adaptive and it can keep going. It will do whatever it takes to continue to have you survive. But you can't keep going like this, because eventually your body is going to force you to take a break. You can't ignore the signs forever. You can for a little bit. You can push through fatigue. You can push through the pain. You can push through the stress. Again, I'm really good at doing that, but eventually the breakdown is inevitable. And recovery isn't just about physical rest, because I'm better at doing that now. I actually take rest days. I actually do good with stretching and doing mobility and doing all these things, but it's about nervous system regulation, stress management, and hormone balance. So that's the things that I'm missing, is actually regulating my nervous system, because I literally live in fight or flight. And I think that so many people who are listening to this, watching this, you're also there. So it's not just about sleeping more or, taking the rest day, which is important, but it's also about regulating your nervous system. So one of the biggest things, or some action steps that I'm going to take that maybe could help you if you're in this situation, is I'm going to make some daily non-negotiables for myself to include at least one parasympathetic nervous system activating habit. Breath work, going outside for just sunlight exposure, which I go outside every single day. I go outside to do some sort of movement, but just going outside and being still and maybe breathing outside. I already do the cold plunges, so that's a nice cold thing that's supposed to help with your nervous system regulation, but also that is a stressor. So if I'm not properly recovering from that, it could be just more stress thrown on the fire. And one thing that I really want to start doing is journaling, stretching at night to just help calm my body down. Like being okay with just sitting on the couch and just watching some YouTube videos and relaxing, instead of thinking that I have to be on my laptop or I have to be working, because I'm really bad at that. I will literally bring my laptop to the couch and sit there until 11:30 at night and just work, when I could use that time to just decompress, which is what I'm going to try to do now, because I think I'm just going to be more effective too. I'm going to be more creative. I've been having a lot of creative blocks because I'm just so stressed that there's nothing going on up here, right? And I've realized that if I don't give my body a reason to switch over from fight or flight to that rest or digest state, it's just going to keep me in survival mode. So this is now a priority for me. And I really need to fix my sleep and my nutrition and my stress load. And my nutrition is fucking perfect. I'm sorry, but you tell me to hit these macros, done. I'm hitting these macros perfectly. I eat only whole foods. The most processed food that I eat is fucking sourdough bread and protein powder. But I'm not eating enough for the amount of stress that I put my body under. So I need more carbs, which will help to improve serotonin production, which will help to reduce stress. I'm working with a new nutrition coach. Her name is Cheryl Nasso, and we're working together to really get my calories up in a comfortable place where my body is no longer just holding on. It's thriving. It's getting stronger. It's performing better. I'm performing better. I'm feeling better. My sleep schedule is horrendous. If you knew my sleep schedule, holy shit, it is bad. I go to bed every night at like 1:30, 2 o'clock. My sleep is very broken. I wake up every morning feeling like I barely slept. It's terrible. So I need to work on sleep, nutrition, emotional stress management, and finding an outlet like journaling, like puzzling again, because I've lost puzzles. I did a puzzle while I was sick and it just brought me back. I need more puzzles. If anybody knows where I can get some really dope puzzles, please let me know. But this was really just a reality check, and it's a reality check for you. That's what I want this episode to be. Are you living or are you just surviving? Because I am just surviving and I want to live, and I'm going to make this the year that I live, that I really truly live, that I find joy in training, in business, in life, because I've lost the joy for what I do. I go into training and I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself. I go into training and I feel exhausted before I even start anything. And I'm sick of feeling like that. I want to find that passion and love for it again. Business, same thing. I just feel like I'm just doing stuff for the sake of doing it because I feel like I need to do more, when instead I want to be able to do stuff to make an impact and help people and get back to why I got here. You know, I want to find joy in life again, because I'm just going through each day like, that's it. Like, I'm just end of another day. Let's get to another one and survive. So I want you to ask yourself, like, are you always just grinding? I hate that word. And you're never present. Like, are you ignoring pain, fatigue, burnout signs? Are you losing the joy for training, for business, for life? Because I didn't realize how unhappy I was until my body forced me to stop and slow down. And that's when I really was like, shit, I need to fix something. So if you're feeling this way, it's time for you to take a step back and to make your body feel good again. So I want to encourage you guys, like, if you're running on autopilot, if you're drowning in stress, if you're ignoring all these signs, this is your wake-up call too. I feel like everybody deals with these things, but a lot of us just ignore it, or we chalk it up to we're just getting older and we settle for drowning. And some of us almost find comfort in that pain. So we almost seek that stress. But if you feel like this episode hit home for you, I want to hear from you. Like, I'm going to put my email down below. If you feel like this episode really connected with you and you need help, or you want somebody to hold you accountable, reach out. I would love to hear from you, whether it be in an email, whether it be in a DM on Instagram. I want to hear from you. But if this resonated with you guys today, I want you to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, or just share it on your stories on your social media. Tag me. I love seeing it. But go out today and do one thing that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.